she's a mountain, then you're an ocean.
Hi, everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Inclusivi-TEA, and also the author of a new book on sustainable living called You Can Save the World. And this is our podcast, Inclusiva Talks Sustainability. And we have guests on that talk about their own sustainability journeys and their ways of making the world better, as well as guests who focus on creative endeavors. So today we're incredibly fortunate to have with us Sean McBride. And Sean is actually going to talk to us about Antarctica. So you'll hear all about that in a little while. But for now, Sean, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Laurie. Thanks for having me.
It is absolutely a pleasure. So I wanted to start by just saying, Sean, where are you in your life? What are you kind of working on right now?
Well, I suppose the main thing I've been doing lately is during COVID, I learned to fly a plane as part of a longer term goal to fly an electric aircraft from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you know, with your own interest in sustainability, the way the world is going is we're moving to electric. We're trying to get away from carbon emissions. And to me, this seemed like a good idea to not only highlight renewables, but also highlight the threats to Antarctica through what we're doing on the rest of the planet. And the technology is not there yet to do what I want to do. But over the next 5 to 7 years, I think it might be. So, it may not happen, but you've got to have goals.
You've got to have goals. So, Sean, I'd like you now to take us on a journey sort of how you got to where you are, and starting back as early as that makes sense for you.
Okay, I suppose all my life I wanted to do something that made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone has that in them, that they want to leave a legacy behind. They want to make some difference to make their life worthwhile, so they can look back and say, well, hey, I did something worthwhile while I was here on this planet. So my journey was more about seeking adventure, I suppose, in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a father who was quite psychologically damaging to me. And it took me many years through doing adventure sports to actually build up my confidence to overcome the negative impact of him, and like I've forgiven him a long time ago for that, because, his father was the same with him. It just gets carried on from generation to generation. So I did all these adventure sports. And then at the age of 18, I joined the Australian Army Special Forces. But I was too much of a hippie back then, and peace, love, and mung beans. And so it didn't really gel with me, and I left. But probably I always regretted it because I liked Special Forces. And so I went back when I was 32 and I rejoined.
Wow.
And this time I went all the way through and became a Green Beret commando. And I was still a bit of a hippie. That never goes. A bit of a new ager. I spent about 10 years in that intervening time in the New Age movement, doing everything from rebirthing to Zen meditation to God knows what, lots of things. And I applied some of that in the Special Forces as well. And then I decided to go overseas for a year, and I went to the Middle East. I was looking for something to do. I felt I was here for a reason, and I felt I needed to do something to help people. And I went to the Middle East, and what I realized was that they didn't really need my help because they had this very strong family connection. Everyone was connected, the relatives, everyone was helping each other out. And I thought, well, that's not really my spot, And I came back from that. It was a wonderful trip. I spent a year away. And I came back and I was a bit lost. I ended up going to university when I got back, moved up to Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. Went to university to study anthropology, which fitted in with my interest in survival, because I'd been a survival instructor for many years. I mean, probably 2 or 3 decades. And got my degree, ended up in quite a good job. But before that, after I left university, I split up with my partner, and I had a young daughter who was 5 years old. And I was in, she was staying with me one day. She was just in the bedroom asleep. And, I still was searching for this, what am I here to do type of thing. And I was at a very low point in my life. I was feeling quite depressed. I didn't have a job yet after university. I didn't have any cash. My relationship had broken up, all that kind of thing. And I was probably, partially suicidal in a way. And I was leaning against the door of her room, my daughter's room, and this voice just came into my head and said, there are children her age being abused in Southeast Asia. And I went, wow, well, where did that come from? That's just really weird. I mean, it was my voice, but it was just
Right.
an unusual phrase, right? So it was actually going to be a one-way trip because I was still depressed. I thought, well, I'm probably going to get myself killed over there in Southeast Asia, dealing with these trafficking gangs and all the rest of it. But I didn't see much future in the world. And so I went to Thailand and I rescued these 5 kids. But in that time, I was working with the hill tribe villages, and I was up in the villages doing various things and helping them. And I sent a whole bunch of kids to school and a whole bunch of things anyway. And, after about maybe a month or two, I woke up one morning and I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why am I happy? And it was because I was helping people. It's like we think that the key to happiness is to do something for ourselves, but maybe the key to happiness is to do something for others. Yeah. So I came back to Australia and I told, I gave a talk at a Rotary Club, and a couple of people from the Rotary Club asked me to come out for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and they said that they wanted to help. And with those 2 gentlemen, who were great guys, we set up a charity called the Grey Man Organisation, and which comes from the military, where a grey man is someone who stays in the darkness and gets things done, or stays out of the limelight, I suppose. And so we went on to, over the next 7 years, a totally voluntary organisation, no one employed or anything like that, and we rescued 176 women and children from brothels in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Thailand, Nepal, lots of places. Anyway, all volunteer.
So, Sean, I just back up for a second. When you first went, so you're standing in the doorway of your daughter's room, then the money comes in from the army, and you say, okay, I was called to do this. I don't know why, but clearly. How did you even connect to find those first 5 children? How did you even start?
Well, it's one of those funny things, you've probably heard of, what's the word? When things kind of come together and strange connections happen.
Serendipity?
Yes, serendipity. Thank you. So what happened was I actually did a little bit of research before I went, and I contacted a number of organizations, and all these organizations would say, oh, yeah, look, we're not very good with volunteers. Look, maybe call us back in 3 months and we'll see what we can do. And, I kept getting knockbacks. But I contacted one organization, and their head of operations asked to see me. And so we met, and as soon as, Special Forces background opens doors. So as soon as I mentioned Special Forces, he was like, okay, we need you. So he asked me to do some investigation for him. So I did. But their intelligence was not very good, I found. And so I went down some dead ends with them. They had people they suspected were a particular pedophile who was well known. I went to bars. I did undercover work. I think it was a gay bar, and I pretended to be gay. And not that gay people are necessarily pedophiles, but this guy supposedly was. And it turned out that they had the wrong guy completely. And so for a few experiences like that, and I thought, I think I can do better on my own than this, but it gave me a start and gave me some contacts. And so I started going into the brothels and pretending to be a customer looking for young girls. And over a period of time, I did find these individual girls, and then I talked to them about getting out. And, we had a few hair-raising things. One was a motorcycle chase, and others were like, they've sort of got bodyguards, tough guys protecting these places. But over time, over that 3 months, I managed to get the 5 girls out. And then from what I learnt there, I put into training our grey man people, who were all volunteers, who were either ex-special forces or ex-police or civilians as well. And we did very well, and we sent I think about 120 children to school who hadn't been going to school before, organised a transport network in the hill tribe villages to get kids down from the villages to schools, built toilets in villages, did a whole bunch of things. It was a great time, and for that 7 years, I wasn't depressed.
Right.
And then, to make a long story short, back in 2012, we did a rescue up in the north of Thailand, and we rescued 26 children who were not being held, but were in a village, transiting a village in the north before being sent to brothels in the south. And so, it was a pretty big deal, because a lot of people were saying, they've stopped trafficking in the north, which was just rubbish. And that was after 3 days, sending a team in for 3 days, and they rescued these 20-something kids. But in doing so, we stepped on a lot of the toes, and we upset the apple cart of a lot of NGOs, and one in particular. And that guy was quite powerful. And he basically started a smear campaign against us. And unfortunately, he got the assistance of some gullible journalists, and they wrote a big piece that ended up on the front page. I think it was not New Year's Day. I think it was 2nd of January of 2013, maybe. And there's the front page of the Weekend Australian, which is a major newspaper in Australia, saying that I had allegedly faked a rescue in northern Thailand to get money. And it's a great way to start the new year, I have to tell you. Yeah. And we tried to fight it. We tried to put the real story out there. One of the problems was that I'd also mentioned that one of these girls had been rescued earlier by a woman who found her and took her to the police station. And one of the police sergeants there had kept her for 3 days and raped her, and then taken her back to the traffickers. And I put that in a press release because I wanted something done about it. Okay. And of course, with Thailand, I don't know if you've got any experience with there, but they tend to shoot the messenger. So the fact that I'd actually embarrassed the Royal Thai Police meant that I was a target. So they, it's a very long story, but the upshot was that it damaged the charity. Sure. In that they put these articles out, about this rubbish. And the fact was that, Rotary actually handled our money. It went through a Rotary World Service. And so we couldn't just, raise funds and then go, oh, I think I'll take this money and buy a Ferrari, just didn't work like that. But of course, journalists, they don't often look much deeper. And so to protect the charity, I stepped down as the president because they really wanted to get rid of me because I was the driving force. And after that, the new president came in, he stopped doing the rescues, and we just did, we supported grassroots charities in Thailand to give kids education. So, but what that did was that plunged me into a mild depression, which I wasn't aware of for a long time, because I was quite hurt by the whole experience. But what I did realize was that I couldn't change human nature. I couldn't change the way people are. You know, and the Buddha said, greed, hatred, and folly rise endlessly. So I couldn't change that in other people, but I could change it in myself. So it may seem like a bit of a leap, but I became a Zen monk.
Okay.
And took the ordination and all the rest of it. And my wife was horrified because she's Japanese, and her idea of a monk is sort of like well, not me.
Sure.
Not me, as she often said. And actually, when I told her I was going to become a monk, she cried. But then she got over it. So I became a monk, and still am. But it was a few years after that I decided that okay, it was enough time wallowing over what the world had done to me and my charity. And I decided that I needed a new goal. And I've always been interested in the environment. You know, I was a member of Greenpeace, and I was a member of Sea Shepherd, and a whole bunch of things.
Sure.
And had done environmental stuff before. And so a friend of mine who was a psychologist, she gave me a big glass jar, and she said, I want you to put in that those things that you want to do on your bucket list, right? And what I've noticed is, you know, like years ago when I was doing some of the New Age stuff, my partner at the time got me to write out 100 things that I wanted to do in life, right? So it was a bit of a struggle, but I wrote out these 100 things. But what I realized later on was that, you know, very few of those things are things that we really, really want to do. They're kind of like, yeah, that'd be nice. You know, it'd be nice to fly a jet fighter at twice the speed of sound. That'd be cool. But do I really want to put the effort in to do that, you know? And so she gave me this big bowl, and it had one little slip of paper in it. And that was, go to Antarctica. Oh. I've always had an interest. And so then I started to think, well, okay, I want to go to Antarctica. How am I going to go to Antarctica? Mm-hmm. And I looked at all sorts of options. It's quite expensive to get to Antarctica. But I wanted something more than just a tourist visit. So I ended up finding this course in New Zealand called the Postgraduate Certificate in Antarctic Studies. And part of that was you went to Antarctica for a couple of weeks. And best course ever, had the most fantastic time. I ended up doing it. Cost me a fortune, but it was worth it. I never looked back, and went to Antarctica. And then I came back from Antarctica, and I thought, I've got to do more about this. That place is magnificent. It needs to be protected for future generations. And with climate change and everything else going on, plastics in the ocean, we are damaging everything, as you know. So I realized that people and children are much more, I did some research, people and children are much more open to science communication if it's done from a superhero. Mm-hmm. So I became Captain Antarctica.
Lovely.
And this is my summer suit, by the way. I did actually have an Antarctic suit, a Captain Antarctica suit in Antarctica.
Okay.
Which was fantastic, kept me very warm as I roamed around the Ross Ice Shelf. But it's not very good here in Brisbane at 40-degree heat in summer. Yep. So this is my Tropicana version of it. Anyway, so I started a Captain Antarctica Facebook page and a website, and just to inform people about Antarctica and what was going on there and the impact of climate change and plastics and all that kind of thing. But not just that, you know, I want people to get excited about Antarctica because it's a magnificent place. And it's, you know, it's the highest, driest, windiest, coldest place on Earth. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely magnificent. You know, it is dazzlingly bright. You need level 4 sunglasses, otherwise you'll end up with snow blindness in about 20 minutes, half an hour. But it's just magnificent. And so it needs to be protected so future people can see it, because not just from a kind of tourist point of view, but Antarctica is like a mirror.
Take your time.
Hmm. It just moves me when I talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's like a mirror to your soul. And it reflects back. And what happens to a lot of people that go there is that it changes their life.
Yeah. It sounds like it absolutely changed you, and you've been drawn there.
Yes,
You sort of had to go.
absolutely,
The
absolutely. And
one bucket list. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
yes, nothing else really appealed, as much as that. And I certainly don't regret going. I mean, it was the most fantastic time with the most fantastic group of people. And, even people that go down as a tourist on a cruise ship, often they are changed by the experience because it's so massive compared to what we're used to that people can feel their own smallness in the face of the universe. And that has an impact in some way. I can't quantify it, but it's not a negative impact. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of a good impact, and people start to think about what can they do to leave a legacy behind. And I think that's the key, really. And so anyway, I started doing the Captain Antarctica stuff and, giving lectures on it and all that kind of thing. And then I was supposed to go to lecture on cruise ships, but then COVID came along,
Right.
and canned all that. So in the meantime, I've just been, promoting information about Antarctica and a lot of misinformation that's there. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about Antarctica, which aren't true, but
Right.
I try and counteract that to some degree. A lot of people believe that you can't go there, but you can. And so that leads back to what I was saying originally, that I'm concerned about Antarctica and what we're doing on the planet, as a lot of people are now. I'm not doom and gloom about it, though. I think we've got a good chance of beating it.
Yep.
As long as people take action, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, which I try and correct with Captain Antarctica, because there are a lot of vested interests who don't want to see the world go in a certain way. They don't want to see us move towards electric or renewables or that kind of thing. And there's lots of myths about these things that are put out often by think tanks that have an agenda and are funded by vested interests. So I try and counteract that, but one of the things I want to do is highlight the use of renewables and the potential of them, plus bring people's attention to Antarctica. And so in doing that, my plan is to fly this electric aircraft from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole, which is about 1,600 kilometers, roughly. And the batteries don't have that capacity yet. But every week there's a new breakthrough, and the density is increasing. So it may be that that's the case, that it works. It may be that it may have to be hydrogen fueled plane.
I was actually going to ask you about hydrogen because we've just become more and more interested in that.
Yes, and hydrogen is taking off now as well. Yeah. I spoke to AeroAvia about their hydrogen system that they've got in their planes that they're experimenting with at the moment. I think the weight is probably too heavy at this stage for me, but the hydrogen would actually get me there. If I could do it, the hydrogen fuel would get me there. But in the meantime, I've spoken to the Australian Antarctic Division about reenacting Sir Douglas Mawson. He's a famous Australian explorer of Antarctica. He was one of the first people to fly in Antarctica, as was another Australian, Sir Hubert Wilkins, back. And it's almost, in 7 years from now, it will be the 100th anniversary of that. So I've spoken to the Australian Antarctic Division about reenacting those flights. And they were open to the idea, so that may happen as well. But in the meantime, I'm flying around here, getting practice and enjoying my little plane. So it's all good.
That's wonderful. So everybody, this is Inclusivi-Talks, and our guest today is Sean McBride, and we are done with our half-hour segment. And so what we're going to do is turn this off. This will be the end of this podcast, and we're going to start a second piece of Sean's story. So we'll have another podcast coming up. And Sean, during that podcast, what I really want to ask you about is, well, sort of what's next for you, what passion really drives you, and things like that. And so move beyond this story, which has been magnificent. I might also think of some other questions around how you got here. So I'm going to turn this off. So everybody, please tune into the next podcast. Thank you for being here for this one. And this has been Sean McBride, and we're going to hear even more about him.